Being an MMA fighter doesn't automatically sign you up for a fan base. In fact, some players turn out to be the anti-fan equation in the sport. See for yourself. First with Ronda Rousey. And I know.
So it kind of sucks I don't have a boyfriend right now, but I'm sure my Twitter's blowing up, right, with those offers at the moment.
I too was confused while putting her on the list, but hey, if you've got fans, it doesn't mean you don't have haters. Her sheer dominance in the ring got many people in her corner. I mean, try getting a 12-match winning streak. And if you don't get similar results, we'll talk then. But there's always a but, isn't it? She was deemed unbeatable. However, that all changed at UFC 193. One of her opponents, Holly Holm, delivered a devastating head kick and ended Rousey's reign as champion. This was a sigh of relief for fans of the sport who just couldn't see her having a streak. Rousey still didn't give up, but however, upon her return, she received another humiliating defeat. She got knocked out in 48 seconds by Amanda Nunes. Yep, that fast. And of course, the fans cheered again, but this could have misogyny at the base of it. I mean, statistically speaking, most UFC fans are men. This means that even if a small portion of fans didn't like her, it could be because of her popularity. But what do I know? Take this with a grain of salt, alright? But not this next one. I'm talking about Josh Koscheck.
I get a lot of hate, not only by other fighters, but, obviously by the fans. And, what's funny is, I play them all like a riddle. And, I'm the guy that's laughing all the way to the bank.
Why I say this one's different is because he's been disliked across the board. The dude was widely reviled by UFC fans, so much so that you'd struggle to find his true fans. How sad is that? And the fault is no one's but his own. Koscheck was known to fake being hit with illegal shots. To make matters worse, he'd poke his opponents in the eyes. But why, right? I guess once you go bad, you go all the way. And in addition to all of that, he was also known to trash talk a lot, but we can let that pass since many other fighters do that as well. He was a walking and talking offensive machine, and so each time he lost, the MMA community celebrated. One similar defeat he received was at the hands of Georges St. Pierre at UFC 124. It's widely regarded as his most brutal defeat. I, on the other hand, just have one question. What defeat can be worse than not having fans at all? Well, let's ask the next guy, Michael Bisping. You must be wondering why we've got him on the list.
Maybe. We'll see. I've done this for a long time, so you can't do it forever, you know? So, we'll see. We'll see how this fight goes. I'm pretty confident I'll win, but George is a great guy. He's a great fighter. He's a hell of an athlete. So, we'll see what happens.
Almost everyone was a fan of his at the end of his career, but that wasn't always the case if you don't know. Much like Koscheck, Bisping too was known for his over-the-top trash talk. Plus, he was accused of being given favors by the UFC, basically calling him the league's favorite child, and fans desperately hoped for his defeat against Dan Henderson. Bisping was like, sure, why not, and proceeded to get KO'd in the most brutal of ways. Similarly, there's Alexander Hernandez.
I keep saying that we're here to devastate. There's no prime participation. So tonight I participated. I gave a competition where there shouldn't have been a competition. We're not on the same level, and I was out grappling him. I knew that would happen.
Okay, let's get one thing out of the way. There's no way that you can make your way to the top by trash talking in MMA. UFC just doesn't work that way. I mean, this isn't WWE, contrary to what some think. And usually, players get to eat their own words after trash talking. So, fans eagerly awaited Alexander Hernandez's UFC debut against Donald Cerrone back in 2019. The only problem, Hernandez couldn't figure out that his opponent was a fan favorite. Plus, he was known for his calm and collected nature. But Hernandez's big talk proved to be empty when Cerrone defeated him in their highly anticipated match. Safe to say that it was a humbling experience for the overconfident Hernandez, but not everyone gets to have an experience like that. Take, for example, Nick Diaz. Brace yourselves for another contender for the most hated MMA fighter title. No, really, at one point in time, Diaz was really hated by fans. And when I say really hated, I mean it. But somehow, he flipped the script at UFC 137. To be fair, Diaz has had very similar issues that most other aggressive players have had, but he often seems more ill-mannered and aggressive than his counterparts. For one, there's trash talking. Then comes his uncensored interviews. His constant complaints about paychecks didn't seem to help him. And oh yeah, before I forget, he once threatened a journalist as well. Despite all of that, his talents inside the octagon cannot be ignored. And that's the problem. He's got a very polarized fan base because of how he is. And while fans fans can always appreciate his skills in the octagon, many just can't stand him outside it, which has always resulted in many fans hoping for his defeat. Confusing, right? Well, that's not even the last of the Diaz clan. Now, let's enter Nate Diaz. Although not as controversial as his brother Nick Diaz, Nate Diaz gets a lot of hate from fans as well. But his style involves taunting his opponents and a mean mug that is meant to get into their heads. However, this approach doesn't make him popular with fans, especially when he follows up a win by choking an opponent and then flexing on them. Yeah, that isn't going to be noted in good faith, buddy. To make things worse, he was involved in the infamous Nashville Brawl during the Strikeforce. Remember that? Much like his brother, Nate too has an extremely polarized fan base. But now, let's look at Venom. Michael Venom Page has gained a significant following due to his flamboyant personality. And here we go again, another trash-talking king. However, his antics, such as tossing a Pokeball to an injured Evangelista Cyborg, have drawn criticism from fans. It's funny though, you gotta give him that. Despite his undefeated record, Page faced a formidable opponent in former champion Douglas Lima at Bellator 227. In a closely contested opening round, Lima ultimately delivered a crushing knockout to Page, marking the British fighter's first loss via knockout, and the fans that didn't want him winning cheered as expected. But he's not even the worst of them. James Toney was one special case. Before his bout with Randy Couture at UFC 118, James Toney was not well received by the MMA community. He had been belittling the sport and its fighters, making bold claims about the superiority of boxing. Couture, however, put an end to Toney's boasting. He swiftly took him down, controlled him on the mat, and submitted him in the first round. Toney's loss was met with delight by MMA fans, who loved seeing him get humbled. But moving on, the story doesn't end with James Toney. We still got a few lovely fighters. Take for example TJ Dillashaw. The UFC and Dana White had tasked TJ Dillashaw with dismantling the flyweight division, but their plans were thwarted by champion Henry Cejudo. Despite being overlooked by many, including the UFC, Cejudo emerged victorious by delivering a knockout in less than a minute to preserve the division. The victory was made even sweeter after it was revealed that Dillashaw had been using performance-enhancing drugs during the fight. Ah, the sweet old illegal trick up the sleeve. Lovely. And finally, the fan favorite Conor McGregor. Shocked? Well, you shouldn't be, because if we're talking about all the trash-talking kings, how can we leave McGregor off the list? Here's the thing, you can't deny that McGregor put UFC on the map for millions, but he's not the cleanest of fighters. In fact, he's had to eat his own words several times, especially in the recent past, starting with his fight against Khabib Nurmagomedov and ending at Dustin Poirier. It's all pretty embarrassing. And what helps put him on the list is both his opponents have a huge fan base, so there's nothing they want more than him losing. And that wraps a bunch of fighters who just can't seem to get fans in their corner. See you in the next video.